Hello, I'm Jacob. You are watching the Prepper's Bunker Outdoors. I'm here today to talk to you about the Reiff Knives F4. It's a knife that I'm very excited about, and a lot of people are excited about as well. Some people totally don't understand. So this initial impressions video is just kind of to explain the knife to you, introduce the knife to you, and just so that you know, today, Friday, late June, whatever it is, the 25th, I guess, these knives will be available on Kickstarter. That's how Reiff Knives is getting kicked off with two models, the F4 and the F6 Luku, and I'm very stoked about it. So what I'm going to do is cut to some B-roll, show you the specs of the blade, and then talk about why I think essentially a basic knife is something that's worth getting excited about, if you're a knife nerd especially. So just to get started, someone's going to be like, hey, you're showing work on the table that wasn't done by the knife. This was not cut by the knife. This was not cut by the knife. It was cut by the chainsaw back there. This is just an initial impressions video. After all, it's not a survival trip. And I did the thickest batoning with my prototype Legionnaire combat knife. But what I wanted to get for this video was just some nice straight grain feather sticks. Sadly, the pine that I had to take down on the property is a little bit too wet for any real feathers. Knife performed flawlessly, but the wood is not yet up to par. I gotta sticker it up. Anyways, all of that besides the point. What we have here is a simple and utilitarian knife, and Stu is the designer of these knives, the owner of the company, and I hope that he doesn't become offended when I use the words simple and utilitarian so often, but for me it's a compliment. If you're familiar with me and my knives, the current models that I offer are very simple and utilitarian. I find that often really simple blades simply perform the best. It's not all about adding a whole bunch of details all over a blade to make it eye candy for someone at the flea market. They only have $6 to spend on a knife anyways. Well, I want performance first and foremost. And so I've been wondering how I was going to frame this video, okay? Because I really like this knife, but what exactly am I going to say? And so I took this knife to the Iraq Veteran 8888 machine gun shoot, and I took this knife to Blade Show, and almost everybody who looked at it and held it liked it. Almost. I had a few people that just simply weren't impressed or didn't like something about it, and actually those people were the most valuable to me for this video, because the most common complaint was the weight distribution and the handle to blade ratio. You see, we've got this full-sized handle here. I wear large gloves, but my hands aren't super thick, but I've got lots of handle space. Someone with much larger hands than me would still really enjoy this knife. And a relatively short blade. Also, when it comes to balance, the knife balances way back here, okay? And so that is not common in the knife industry. Typically, for aesthetic reasons, most knives either have a fairly equal blade to handle ratio and weight, or they have a superior blade to handle ratio, like the blade is considerably larger and potentially heavier than the handle. So it's not common to find knives of this ratio, and aesthetically, some will immediately be put off by it. I will say, in fact, that there's a good chance when I began my knife journey that I would have been put off by it. However, when the edge hits the wood, you will understand. The weight is brought back by the heavy handle contouring and the fact that it's full thickness solid G10. G10 as a handle material is quite heavy. It does not soak anything up. It's very sterile. It's incredibly tough. It's a amazingly stable and tough synthetic handle material that happens to be heavy. And the knife, the way that it sits in your hand and the control that you have over the blade when you're working with wood is phenomenal. Now, the blade is slightly hollow ground. You're probably not really going to be able to tell in what I just showed you there. And that was purposeful. Hollow grinding is a bad word. I have used hollow grinding as a bad word. But there are different levels of hollow grinding. And if you're not familiar, essentially, if you look down a blade tip first like this, you'll see how the metal was removed to create the edge. And so a saber or flat grind, the metal would have been removed flat from both sides. A convex grind, it would be a little bit rounded, and a hollow grind is going to be a little bit hollow, like this, okay? And you can have knives that are very slightly hollow ground, and you can have knives that are excessively hollow ground. And what this affects, it affects slicing ability to a degree. It affects resistance at depth to a degree, and it affects strength. So a severely hollow ground knife is going to have a very nice initial cut because the edge thickness is typically going to be quite thin, and you don't gain resistance as you cut through, meaning the cuts are very nice until you start hitting the hollow. And if you have a severe hollow grind and you're cutting through, imagine you're cutting potatoes. That first ½ inch, maybe on an extreme hollow grind, is going to cut through that potato extremely easily. But then imagine as the hollow grind comes out, if it comes out very severely, then the amount of resistance and friction increases exponentially. So cutting at depth then is hindered. This is a very slight hollow grind. The look of a saber grind is very popular. It's very aesthetically pleasing. It's very on trend. But depending on edge thickness and a few other things, you could have a knife that potentially doesn't slice quite as well. With a very slight hollow grind, you retain almost all of your strength. You get a little bit more of initial slicing efficiency. And with a slight hollow grind like this, it's not going to make too much of a difference at depth. The other thing that I want to talk about real quick is the fact that this knife is made out of CPM 3V. So what really irritates me is when knife companies use a potentially inferior steel or heat treat and make up with it with edge thickness to gain strength. You don't need to have a perfect heat treat or a really strong material if you have simply a whole bunch of mass, size, thickness. That does make up for a lot when it comes to strength. You don't need that with CPM 3V. It's an incredibly tough steel that holds an edge very well and has some wonderful stainless properties, although it is not fully a stainless steel. So, what you get here, this, I I've already gone longer than I wanted to go here. The materials are premium here. They're made in America. CPM 3V is absolutely a premium fixed blade steel. It could be considered and is considered by many to be the ideal fixed blade knife steel. The G10 is very nice. All of the finishing work on this knife is perfect. And perfect is a word that's hard to use when it comes to knives. I have not found any flaw in it. The design is incredibly comfortable. The owner, Stu, I was involved, I think, pretty close to the very beginning of his desire to come into the knife industry. And so I saw the work that he was doing, and he made hundreds of handle prototypes 3D printed. He sent them to a ton of people, myself included. My son still plays with the prototypes regularly. He wanted to get the handle geometry just right for a large variety of people. Not perfect for small-handed people, not perfect for large-handed people, just incredibly comfortable handle for a very broad spectrum of people. I think that he got it perfect. The finish on the steel is all uniform, even for a prototype. This is a prototype, guys. Just perfect. And the grinds, the machining, everything. I can't find a flaw on the blade. So on Kickstarter, these are going up. The MSRP is just over $300. I posted these are going to be going for $300. What you're going to be getting is, with the F4 especially, a premium belt knife that is ideally suited to bushcraft tasks. The only question that I have, this is an initial review, so I haven't beat this knife a lot. I've batoned a little bit with it, whatever. You can baton a little bit with almost anything. So heat treat, I can't say it's perfect yet. With the amount of attention to detail that I know that Stu has, with the dedication that he has to releasing a premium product, I have no doubt that the manufacturer of these blades, or the people that did the heat treat, that he was very strict on quality and not cutting corners. I do believe that if anybody had any problems with them, that he would make it right, because he's wanting to have an absolutely premium product. And if they aren't perfect in the prototype run, I am certain will be perfect for full production. What I can say so far is simply that the edge has held well. It came out of the box perfectly, wonderfully sharp. And again, I would be very surprised if heat treat was off. One of the good things about CPM 3V now in 2021 is that it's been around long enough that people have gotten really good at heat treating it. And I remember when this steel came out and everybody was sharing their secret heat treat secrets for CPM 3V, and manufacturers were screwing it up. 3V knives were coming out and chipping and having all kinds of issues, microchipping, full-sized chipping, edge retention issues, a whole gamut of issues. It's been out long enough that manufacturers and heat treat facilities know how to heat treat it now, and that's why sometimes it's a safer bet to go with a premium, well-known steel that's been around for a while than it is to be constantly jumping on the latest and greatest steel, because a good steel, well heat treated, is better than the best steel in the universe, poorly heat treated. A poor steel, well heat treated, is typically better than the best steel, poorly heat treated. And CPM is not just a 3V is not just a good steel. It's not a poor steel. It's literally one of the best steels for a fixed blade knife, and properly heat treated, it performs absolutely phenomenally. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to put a link in the description box below to the Kickstarter. Below that, I'm going to put a link to how you can support this channel. One important thing that I forgot that's kind of embarrassing, I mentioned the people who didn't like it, and I never gave the kicker, okay? It was about weight ratio from handle to blade and aesthetic ratio from handle to blade. And I think to really appreciate those two things in this knife, you have to be in this community for a long time and start playing with blades and start using a blade with ratios like this. I have a bit of experience with knives like this already with a larger handle to blade ratio, and they are phenomenal to use. They really are. And so this knife, all of those complaints brought to my attention what was so good about it. It's not going to be for everybody. Now, when it comes to aesthetics, if this isn't for you, the F6 will be. I can't imagine anybody who wouldn't like the looks of the Reiff Knives F6 Luku. It's got a 6-inch blade instead of the 4-inch, and it just downright looks excellent. I can't tell you guys anything about the sheath. The sheath that I got is not what the knives will come with. He got this into the mail quickly to me. The sheaths weren't ready yet, so he just bought a generic sheath. It's a great sheath, but it's not what the knives will come with. But I have no doubt that the sheaths that they come with will be phenomenal. I believe you have a choice of leather or Kydex. What's exciting to me about Reiff is his dedication to fit, finish, and quality. I have no doubt that every Reiff knife sold is going to be absolutely freaking excellent. And a lot of companies sell knives because they can sell knives. They've got this big, long product list of knives, and they're like, hey, a bunch of people make this knife and it sells well for them. Let's do something similar, right? That's not what Reiff is doing. He has very specific visions, very specific goals, and he's looking for something very specific in each knife. None of them, in my opinion, are generic. However, I've had people message me and tell me that this knife looks like about 10 other knives. Once you get this knife in hand, I am certain that it will not feel like any other knife available. Could be wrong. I haven't tried every knife, but the attention to detail and design is what makes a fairly basic looking knife still be exciting in the market, because most people aren't paying this much attention to detail. Sure, I forgot about 80% of the things that I wanted to say, but I am being demolished by mosquitoes, and I am also aware that this video has gone on far longer than I intended. Let me know what you think in the description box below. I look forward to talking to you, and I hope that you have a blessed day.